Elon Musk's SpaceX has an ambitious plan to provide low-cost internet to the entire world. But not everyone is celebrating. However, Musk has a plan to win them over with the third launch of SpaceX Starlink satellites. Hawthorne-based SpaceX is preparing to launch the first rocket of the new year from Florida's Space Coast on Monday, when the company is expected to send a Falcon 9 rocket into orbit with 60 SpaceX Starlink satellites. The liftoff can be watched live through a SpaceX webcast beginning shortly before the launch window opens at 6:19 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Monday from Cape Canaveral's Complex 40 launch pad. It will mark the first launch in a packed slate of missions from Cape Canaveral in 2020, which could see more than 30 launches by SpaceX and United Launch Alliance if schedules hold. The mission will mark the 78th flight of a Falcon 9 rocket since 2010 and the 81st flight of SpaceX's Falcon 9 family, which includes 3 launches by the triple-core Falcon Heavy vehicle. The upcoming launch, the third of its kind for the SpaceX Starlink program, will bring to 180 the number of satellites that so far make up the constellation of small satellites that promise to beam high-speed internet access to every corner of the globe. In this video, Engineering Today will discuss the next 2 launches by Elon Musk's SpaceX. One will try to keep SpaceX Starlink satellites from blocking the stars, and another will be SpaceX Crew Dragon test. Let's go into details. Falcon 9 was originally scheduled to launch no earlier than December 30th. SpaceX delayed its next mission, Starlink 2, to January 3rd for unknown reasons. Weather on the new date was unfortunately forecast to be terrible at SpaceX's LC-40 launch pad and had a 60% chance of scrubbing the mission. SpaceX must have been at least as concerned about conditions for drone ship Of Course I Still Love You, OCISLY, in the Atlantic Ocean. High seas and thus a pitching drone ship deck can make booster landings much riskier, as the company ultimately skipped launch window for the SpaceX Starlink launch target, January 6th. The weather team at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station predicts a greater than 90% chance of acceptable conditions for launch Monday night. If the launch is delayed to Tuesday night, the liftoff time will move around 20 minutes earlier. There is an 80% chance of favorable weather Tuesday night, with slightly higher odds of cloudiness that could breach the cumulus cloud rule. The launch Monday will kick off a brisk pace of launches by SpaceX planned for 2020. Ultimately, on missions where SpaceX has nothing to lose by delaying the launch, the company now puts a successful booster recovery much higher on its list of priorities. As recently as March 2018, SpaceX intentionally expended a few Falcon 9 boosters because ocean conditions would have been extremely risky to OCISLY, and crew and the company, or customer, had no interest in delaying the launch further to wait for calmer seas. The first set of satellites launched on the 23rd of May, 2019. After the launch, astronomer Alex Parker said his heart sank when he saw the first pictures of satellite train. Astronomers and scientists have often criticized the satellite constellation for being too bright. When the first set of 60 satellites streaked through the sky, the results, satellite train, rang fears of man-made lights outnumbering the stars in the sky. Lights that will hamper the view of on-ground telescopes trying to see into the far reaches of the universe. The Astronomical Society and SpaceX have been engaged in multiple discussions to find ways to solve the problem. Last month, Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX president and CEO, announced that even though the company had not anticipated the problem, they were determined to correct it. In response to concerns from astronomers, Shotwell said one of the 60 satellites set for launch Monday will test a new, less reflective coating designed to reduce the brightness of the spacecraft. The hope is, if successful, the coating will be enough to allay fears of satellites getting in the way of astronomical studies. The bulk of SpaceX's missions in 2020 will add satellites to the company's Starlink constellation of broadband satellites. SpaceX plans to operate the initial block of 1,584 Starlink satellites in orbits 341 miles, that's 550 kilometers, above Earth. The company already has Federal Communications Commission approval to deploy up to 12,000 satellites, with plans to eventually launch tens of thousands more, and has hinted in additional regulatory filings that it could seek to operate up to 42,000 SpaceX Starlink satellites. SpaceX founder Elon Musk has championed the go. The company says it hopes to begin regional broadband service with the partially complete SpaceX Starlink constellation by the middle of this year, once it's launched 12 Starlink missions. Starlink service for internet consumers worldwide will come after 24 launches, according to Shotwell. Also coming up on a different Cape Canaveral launch pad, SpaceX is expected to perform an in-flight abort test of its Crew Dragon spacecraft, a critical performance measure before the company is cleared to transport human astronauts to the International Space Station sometime later this year. An exact launch date, which depends on NASA, has not been announced yet. If you're not hyped about the upcoming first crewed flight of SpaceX's astronaut taxi, a new video could help get you there. SpaceX founder and CEO Elon Musk posted the 2.5-minute animation on Twitter on December 29, 2019. It takes viewers through many of the key phases of the Demo 2 mission, during which the company's Crew Dragon capsule will ferry astronauts to and from the International Space Station, ISS, for the first time. SpaceX will be cleared to prep for Demo 2 in earnest after Crew Dragon passes a key in-flight test of its abort system, which is designed to get astronauts out of harm's way in the event of a launch emergency. The in-flight abort test is currently scheduled to take place on January 11th at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The capsule that will fly Demo 2 should be ready to go shortly thereafter, Musk said in another December 29th tweet. Crew Dragon should be physically ready and at the Cape Canaveral, Florida in February, but completing all safety reviews will probably take a few more months. In recent months, SpaceX engineers have put the Crew Dragon through a series of rigorous safety tests, including additional tests of its parachutes and engine systems. The last time astronauts launched from U.S. soil to the International Space Station was in 2011. Since then, NASA astronauts have traveled to and from the space station on board a Soyuz rocket that takes off in Kazakhstan, courtesy of the Russian Space Agency, at a cost now of about $86 million apiece. If Demo 2 goes well, SpaceX Crew Dragon can start to fly operational missions to and from the ISS for NASA. SpaceX is contracted to fly 6 of these flights with the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon under a September 2014 deal, which awarded the company $2.6 billion. Boeing got a similar $4.2 billion contract at the same time. The aerospace giant will fulfill this deal with its CST-100 Starliner capsule, which launched for the first time last month. That mission, the Uncrewed Orbital Flight Test, OFT, was supposed to dock with the ISS. But on December 20th, an unmanned flight was sent into the wrong orbit and failed to dock with the space station. With the mission abandoned, the craft was directed back to Earth, where it parachuted to the ground in New Mexico. According to a NASA Office of Inspector General report issued November 14th, which noted both programs are years behind schedule. The auditor's office broke down the numbers and determined the cost per astronaut to fly with SpaceX would come out to about $55 million, and with Boeing it would be about $90 million. Both NASA and Boeing officials pushed back on the figures, saying they failed to account for cargo carrying capabilities and also did not consider that SpaceX already had a Cargo Dragon spacecraft to build off. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this. Hit the like button if you find the video interesting, and kindly provide your valuable feedback in the comment section. This will help us to improve.